So I got a call from a good friend of mine, Brian McTeer. Uh, he owns a studio called Minor Street, and they do some fantastic stuff down in Philadelphia. But he called me up. He had a friend of his, Joel Morowitz, who, if I remember, he was a record executive, and he had an incredible knowledge of pro audio gear, and he wanted to get into selling pro audio gear because not only did he know about the stuff, he had compiled a huge amount of gear that belonged to him personally, and he wanted to introduce Joel to me. So um, we called each other and we started talking, and we became pretty good friends. Joel's an interesting character. His knowledge is something else about vintage gear and interesting gear. Unfortunately, Joel passed away a few years ago. But the one thing that my connection with Joel was he would find these little boutique companies that I never heard of. And I always love finding this kind of stuff because it's, one guy doing everything. And the one company that he introduced me to was this company called Electronaut. And it was run by a guy named Rob Roy Campbell. And I think he's still in business. I'm going to tack on a bunch of videos that I found of his on the internet that I cleaned up and edited and made, more, the modern, I guess you would say. But I started talking to Rob Roy, and he's a one-man operation out of Chicago. And his first product that he made was this tube mic pre. And the thing about him, he figured out how to do every last thing about making the product. So a lot of boutique places, they'll get their casings from one place and they'll source all their equipment, the components from different places and then assemble them. He was doing everything. He was doing all the metal work. He was doing all the engraving. He was this guy. But the thing is, he didn't know any better. And by doing all that, he did learn how to do things that he didn't know how to do before. But it was a hard lesson. And then he figured out, okay, I need to subcontract this stuff out. So, but the thing is about him making everything, it was like jewelry, his equipment. And you can see the pictures of the tube compressor, which he doesn't make anymore. He's concentrating on the compressor, which my understanding is he can't make enough of those, and they're pretty expensive and they're pretty incredible sounding. But like I said, one man operation for doing everything. But even the presentation, the flight case it came in, it all was just like jewelry. You opened it up, everything was perfect. And I guess that comes from, not I guess, I know that comes from one person and having the pride in doing what they do. And I also put in, there's an interview of him at a NAMM show, I think it was 2015, and just listen to him. I mean, he just knows his stuff. So we used to talk on the phone all the time about how to promote his product or help out, and it just some stuff was just general. There's just some people I hit it off with, and this guy was just such a nice guy to talk to. I've reached out to him. I sent him an email to see how he's doing. So I don't know if I think he's still doing what he's doing, but I'm not sure. But his website's up, and you can go there. But what I did is I tacked on, I think it's 3 videos of, so you can see the mic pre and you can see the compressor, him answering questions, and then he did this thing about analog versus digital, which is very, very interesting. So I hope you enjoy this.
We're looking at a compressor. Why don't you give us a little walkthrough? What are we looking at?
So this is a single channel variable mu compressor. It's sort of my modern take on the Fairchild 660. I sort of mapped out all the things I thought were amazing about the Fairchild, all the things that I thought could be improved, and tried to go through each one and design out the problems and add some new functionality and better interface.
What were the problems that you identified?
Well, I think the Fairchild was a great tool for 1950s, but having a VU meter in a compressor is actually problematic in a digital environment. So this shows actually the peak and the average. at the same time, and you can see exactly where your clip point would be on your digital system. So it's a much better reference. I set it up so that you can monitor the signal coming in off the input, also monitor the signal after the attenuator, and monitor the output. So you can really see what the compressor is doing. The DC threshold control, which was on the rear panel on the Fairchild, was moved to the front here because it's super useful. You can trim the detector circuit to only respond to peaks. I think that's a really useful feature. And the balancing mechanism is greatly improved. So I actually built in a harmonic distortion measurement into the unit. So when you go into balance mode, it injects a very low distortion sine wave into the input and then filters that out and listens for the harmonic of that sine wave at the output and displays that on the front meter. So you can just see what your distortion component is and adjust your balance until you get the minimum distortion.
What made you want to recreate it? What's the coolest thing about it?
Well, variable mute compression goes back to the 1930s. It was an amazing idea in the beginning. And Ryan Narma was really the first guy to make a vari-mu that could handle anything, and it was a beautiful object. And it was a brute force kind of approach to compression, and obviously its legacy speaks for itself. I tried to preserve the things I loved about it. For example, most modern variable mu compressors are multi-stage devices. The nice thing about the Fairchild is that it's a single stage. There's almost nothing happening in the audio. The audio goes through an input transformer, a simple tube amp, and an output transformer. There's no capacitors in the signal path. There's nothing there. But in order to have this simplicity for the audio's sake, you need this very complex controlling amplifier to control and get the dynamic range control that you want out of it. So it is a bit of a brute force. Obviously, we're talking about 4 units here. It's 34 pounds, and we're talking about a single channel compressor. Yeah. So it's sort of a monster, but you can't beat the sound.
Yeah, it looks unbelievable. Just looking at the guts, how many tubes are in this thing?
Well, with the 5749 option, it can use 6386s, but the standard configuration is 14 tubes and 7 transformers. It's a beast.
Hi, I'm Rob Roy Campbell. I design and build tube amplifiers here in Chicago. This one's a microphone and instrument preamp designed for recording called the M63. As of late 2011, there are M63 preamps in daily use in 9 countries around the world. That includes the United States, Canada, Great Britain, Belgium, Germany, Sweden, Switzerland, Australia, and South Africa. Since it's lead-free and RoHS compliant, as well as CE certified, it's available to everyone in the EU. You can email me directly at info@electronaut.info. Happy New Year to the whole world. And may all the recordings you make in 2012 sound incredible.
Perfection is a highly subjective idea. There's been a debate raging in the pro audio world for decades now, analog versus digital. For 100 years, engineers tried to solve every problem, fix every flaw in the music recording process. And now with digital, we've pretty much arrived at a place where most of those flaws have been eliminated. The system itself imparts nothing into the sound. It is perfection in a lot of ways. And what we've discovered is that if you go looking for nothingness and you find it, it's really boring. So there's this technology that's been essentially lying dormant for half a century. In a lot of senses, it has never really been fully realized. To me, that's amazing, that in this high-tech world, we still covet something 65 years old that hasn't been produced in half a century and still inspires that passion in recording engineers. What if we take all of the best tools that we have now, digital audio analysis tools and test and measurement capabilities that we didn't have back then, and revisit some of these ideas and see what can we do with them? Can we preserve the things that we thought were wonderful and fix all the other things about them that we didn't like? The old vintage equipment was amazing, and new ideas, so many of them are amazing. Rather than see this as an argument between analog versus digital where one has to triumph over the other, we should reframe how we view progress and recognize that we don't have to throw away yesterday's great ideas just because we have new ideas today.